It was bittersweet having breakfast for a final time there at Jay's. The food was great, the company was great, but we all knew that shortly after breakfast we were going to have to pack up and head north. Going to be kind of tough to leave these great people and this great food behind us. I took note that the crew that said goodbye to us represented 3 generations of Jay's family. The generations that loved Alaska, they stick together, they work together. What a joy. As we headed north, it started raining. And that was the first time it had rained in that entire trip, which is a miracle because typically this time of the year in Alaska, every day gets a little bit of rain. I am super excited because we're on our way through the town of Soldotna, and I have been waiting ever since that first day when we came south and we stopped at that marvelous bakery. I've been waiting to go back there and get an apple fritter and a bear claw. And for those of you that don't know what a bear claw is, it is an almond-filled pastry that is phenomenal. So we're going to stop and grab some and take them with us as we head up to Talkeetna. I cannot wait. Apple fritters, bear claws. I can't talk. I can't talk right now. So as we head north to Talkeetna, I'm reflecting on our time so far, and it occurs to me that I came here for 3 reasons. One was to connect with old friends and make some new ones, so check, we did that. And then 2 was for some adventure, check, we did that. And the third thing I wanted to do was really just take time and ponder what's going on with men around the world today. And this morning I woke up, had some new thoughts. I think they're worth sharing. It just is very clear to me that there's a war on. And I'm not talking about in the Middle East or some other part of the world, although that's true. But there's a war for men's souls. And if that sounds dramatic, that's fine, because that's exactly what's going on. It's as if the enemy, in a war there's always an enemy. It's as if the enemy has these certain things that just, he comes at men with them. I think one of the things that the enemy's trying to do is to keep men literally numb. So there are guys that are given into substance abuse and drugs, drunkenness, those kinds of things. I'm not talking about having a hot beer and a cold day. I'm talking about guys that are just, they're staying numb. So they're not dealing with the issues of life. I think the other thing I see that the enemy's using is he's keeping men distracted. You can sit down in front of a television set, whether it's cable or it's satellite or what have you. Man, you might find 500 different channels. 500 channels. Then you can go on the internet, you can go on Facebook and You can hit the web and head off into cyberspace, and man, you can be lost there for hours and hours and hours. I know guys, I know grown men that play hours of video games every day. Play video games every day. Again, I don't have a problem with somebody watching TV or playing a video game as a form of relaxation, but man, I'm talking about guys that they give a large portion of their life to this. That's a distraction. Another thing I see is that there's this overstimulation happening for guys. It's just, you can't just get away and sit down. The way we start every day up here, just sit down quietly by a stream, by a lake, in your backyard and just relax, just quiet yourself. And I think in all of these things, if we're not careful, we end up losing those battles, and ultimately we could lose the war. So the key here is let's not become numb. Let's not become distracted. Let's not let the world just pull at us so much that we're not even sure what's important anymore. Let's go to work, let's work hard, but let's not work for money and stuff. You don't need more stuff, you probably don't need more money. Let's use what we have wisely. Let's make high priorities out of family, out of friendships, out of quiet time with God. Then I think we start winning more battles, and if we can win enough battles, we're going to win the war. Hey, I'm pretty pumped to be here in Talkeetna, Alaska. I just love the sound of the word, Talkeetna. Sounds like adventure and action and activity and fish and all kinds of stuff we can't even imagine yet. We arrived here. We're connected with Keith Reid and his sons and his son-in-law. It's going to be an awesome time here in, say it with me, Talkeetna. The town of Talkeetna is one of the most unique towns around. It's one part hippie, it's one part mountain climber launching point for those that want to climb Mount McKinley. And it's just an amazing place. It's got some new little shops. It's got some old buildings that were built hundreds of years ago. It's really an exciting place to get to see, Talkeetna. All right, Keith, we're in Talkeetna, man. What can you tell me about this place? What's the origin?
Talkeetna originally was part of the railroad system. It was just a town along the railroad.
Okay.
Now, it's got a road into it. We're at the end of the road,
right.
Talkeetna Spur Road. It is the drop-off point for everybody that's flying up onto McKinley.
Okay.
There's a ranger station, and everybody signs in there. And then if they're going to climb Mount McKinley, Denali, then they have to check in there.
Okay.
Also, a lot of fishing goes on here, guiding out of here. The village has really turned into kind of a nice tourist attraction point. However, it's kept its old feel.
Okay.
Right across the street from us is the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Still has a typical breakfast where everybody sits down, whether you know the people or not. Got 3 things you can order, and that's it.
All right.
And we'll probably go and try and have breakfast there one of these days.
What are they famous for?
They're famous for big pancakes, oversized servings, good scrambled eggs, and home fries.
Beautiful.
But everything is big.
Big and good.
Big and good.
You got to fill up the climbers before they hit McKinley,
before
right?
They hit McKinley.
All right.
But it's all been here since, I think the railroad went in the early 1920s.
Wow.
Mostly fishing and hunting stuff now.
I love it.
From here, you can take the train up to Denali. They have the whistle stop train, which you've been on many years ago with the Boy Scouts from Houston.
That was fun.
That stops all along the way to service the cabins between here and since there's no roads between here and the next place that railroad crosses the road.
Right. Awesome. Pretty excited. Today we get to meet an old friend. His name is Jim, and we're picking him up at the train station. And this train is like something out of the 1800s. It's really a sight to behold. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about self-control and standards, and they go together. I'll explain. Self-control is really the ability to overcome desire by reason. So, in other words, something you might want or want to do that you realize, if I do that, there's going to be a really bad end to this thing. You reason that it's wrong to do, and therefore you don't do it. It sounds simple. It's not. It's not at all. But self-control simply is that thing that God put within us, and part of it's conscience, and part of it's just the development of godly character, where I want something, I recognize it's not the best for me or someone else, and therefore I say no to that. This is interesting. There can be no self-control without standards. If there are no standards, if there's no right and wrong, why do I have to control anything? Makes no difference. If there's never a speed limit, if the world is one big Autobahn and you can go as fast as you want, I don't have to use self-control. If I'm on a highway that says the maximum speed is 70, now all of a sudden a standard has been established, a norm has been established, and now I must choose. Do I stick with the standard, or do I use self-control and not break the standard? If there was no such thing as adultery, what difference does it make? Do anything you want to do. But in our society, we've created these standards of this is right and this is wrong. And once the standard is there, then comes the choice, and the choice is governed by self-control. By self-control. If there's something I desire, and yet I recognize that the standard says this would be wrong, I must employ my self-control in order to say no. There's some great biblical examples of people that exercised self-control. Joseph was a young man. This is a young, handsome guy, and he's sold into slavery. He ends up in Egypt in a guy by the name of Potiphar's home. Potiphar has this knockout wife. She's gorgeous. Potiphar's off. He's doing whatever he's doing. And the wife keeps coming on to Joseph. Okay? She's coming on to him. She's not being very subtle. Let's just say it that way. And Joseph had every opportunity to enjoy himself. But Joseph had standards. And Joseph had self-control. And Joseph said no to things that many other young guys would have said yes to. And what I find fascinating is the mentality of today's society that said young people will do anything that they feel like doing. You can't stop young people to do this. And it's almost as if we're cursing our young people. We're saying young people are incapable of having self-control. Young teenagers and 20-somethings, they're incapable of living by standards. And I'm telling you right now, I reject that. Young people are capable, and when we, as this generation of men and women of God, set the standard, communicate the standard, explain consequences and options, young people are fully capable of living according to the standards and developing the self-control they need to keep themselves from 1,000 griefs. 1,000 griefs. Let's believe in these young people today and teach them self-control, and standards. Now, people have thought about this for a long time. Here's a couple quotes from some folks that are pretty important. Benjamin Franklin said this. He said, "Educate your children to self-control, to the habit of holding passion and prejudice and evil tendencies subject to an upright and reasoning will, and you will have done much to abolish misery from their future and crimes from society." Isn't that fascinating? Ben Franklin said that. The Confederate General Robert E. Lee said this, "I cannot trust a man to control others who cannot control himself." Interesting. I see it this way. Self-control, it helps you win the battle between what you want and what you need. And often what we want is not what we need at all. The big issues that were around years ago, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, these were around for centuries. For centuries. And they're the same issues that we have to deal with today. So self-control, if you want to develop it, it's built three ways. You have three choices when faced with things that you really shouldn't deal with. Number one is abstention. What that means is you're dealing with a situation you should never have anything to do with. Abstain, never. Number two, some scenarios, moderation, which means some or sometimes. And then you also can deal with deferred gratification. And all that means is not now, not yet. Okay? So some things never, some things later on, and some things a little bit. You've got to make those choices. You're exercising self-control. Life will be pretty good. So what do we have to control? What are we dealing with today? What are men dealing with today? Pornography, too much food, too much drink, being lazy, being greedy, being selfish. These are all things that there's a standard there that we can embrace the standard, exercise self-control, and we'll be just fine. Don't buy the lie that young people can't control themselves, and don't you buy the lie either. You can. There is a way. There is a way. Now, how do we develop this self-control? Number one, here's this, so this will shock you. Think. 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 Before you act, you think. You think. I heard a man one time say, "No man ever fantasized about being caught." Isn't that interesting? Guys, we'll think about things, we'll daydream, we'll get caught up in these thoughts that aren't right and they aren't good. But if you want to fantasize, just fantasize about making a horrible decision and having everybody that matters to you find out about it. Meditate on that, and that will help you with your self-control. I guarantee it. Next thing you can do is set your standards. If there are no standards, you don't have to have any self-control because anything goes. But you've got to have your standards, and you can set those standards. Next thing you can do is some regular self-evaluation. Regular self-evaluation. How am I doing? Just once in a while, just stop and go, how am I doing? How's my thought life? What words am I using or not using? Am I caring for other people? Self-evaluation, very, very helpful. Next, create strategies to protect yourself. If the computer is causing you trouble, get rid of the computer. If the computer is causing you trouble, set standards. Get software that will protect you. These are basic, simple things that all it takes is some self-control to meet the standard. The other thing is you can give other people access to your thinking. Have a good brother, have a friend, your spouse, somebody, just communicate with them. Tell them what's going on. If you're struggling with an area, talk to them about it. It's important. Remember this, wolves pick off the loners. Don't get all off on your own. Don't believe you can handle life on your own. We're not made that way. That's not what we're supposed to do. And the final thing is, you've set your standards, you've developed your self-control. Never, ever compromise your standards, and you will never be ashamed. You can always walk with your head held high, and you will be respected by those around you. Today we get to meet an old friend. His name is Jim, and we're picking him up at the train station. We've been staying at a platform tent that we affectionately call the Talkeetna Hilton. Quite a place. I want to take you there and show you our accommodations. You'll be impressed. The beautiful Talkeetna Hilton. It's all here, folks. Notice sloping roofs, beautiful canvas interior, 3 beds, Cody, Reid, my own. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Now you'll notice there's no indoor plumbing. So when nature calls, you head to the outdoor restroom. And it can be quite an experience. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. There's something so beautiful in nature if we just stop long enough to look, to perceive it. What we realize is that the God of all creation, the God of the universe, the God of all time, has given us life, abundant life to enjoy on this earth. We are part of His creation. We have a life cycle like the salmon and every other creature. And yet, Scripture asks the question, what is man that you're mindful of him, God? Who are we, Father, that you've given us joy, you've given us friendship, you've given us those that love us and care for us? I am amazed at the goodness of God, that He would give us experiences, adventures. He'd give us an opportunity to speak His word to others, to interact with friends, to see the sun, to see the sky, to feel His rain. It's an amazing thing what our God has done. He's put joy in our heart. He's put peace in our souls, when so many in this world simply look here and there, trying to find peace, and it's found in the one that created them. He is the God of the heavens. He's given us all indications of His existence and His love for us. He is the God that made everything, and yet He is the God that reaches out to us and calls us to be His friend. I'm so thankful that God loves us. I'm so thankful for the opportunities He gives us to enjoy His creation, to enjoy fellowship with others, and to simply be blessed by His presence. We serve a mighty God. We live in a beautiful world, and I am thankful. I am thankful that He is a loving Father. Thank you, Lord.